everybody who I admired from a distance, the Steve Jobs and all these people that I would listen to these interviews they would do. At the end, somebody would ask them, what's the piece of advice they have for someone who maybe wants to be where you are or wants to get started? And I heard the same answer from so many people that I named my podcast this, and it's just start. Like, just start. Now, if you say I've already started, but I know I need to make this change, I know I need to start hiring, I know I need to start tracking my numbers better, I say just start.
Welcome to the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast. Let's get into the show.
Hey everyone, it's Augustino. For many businesses, and real estate is no different, of course, we sometimes hit our own plateaus, and sometimes it's caused by business cycles, sometimes it's caused by our own limits, where we just don't have the time, or the skills, or the resources to continue the growth. This can really cause entrepreneurs to really give up on their dreams and just quit entrepreneurship altogether. Well, today's guest understands how entrepreneurs can fall into this rut. As the owner of a successful real estate investing company and also a partner in one of the country's largest real estate mentoring programs, he specializes in helping entrepreneurs create systems, processes, and automation that allows them to work on their businesses and not be a slave to it. Now, he has shared the stage with Gary Vee, Jocko Willink, and Andy Frisella, among others, where he shares his knowledge with entrepreneurs to help them excel. He's the host of Just Start Real Estate and has conducted over 350 interviews catering to the new and experienced real estate investors. He is also the author of Level Jumping, How I Grew My Business to Over $1 Million in Profits in 12 Months. Now, with all that, I'd like to welcome Mike Simmons to the show. Mike, thanks for coming on, bud.
And thanks for having me here. I really appreciate it. I'm excited about this. I can't wait to get started. I love this. I love the topic. I love the conversation, and I love just connecting with people like you that are trying to help. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you. No, I think it's going to be great as well. Now, guys, if you like what Mike has to say, you can reach him via his website at mikesimmons.com. If you like our content, please don't forget to leave a comment and rate the show. It helps us out tremendously when you do. Finally, if you text the word freedom to 202-410-4202, get our free ebook, The Bulletproof Guide to Finding a Broker. Okay, Mike, go ahead and tell listeners a little bit about how you got your start.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a Midwest kid, born and raised in Michigan. Parents of automotive workers. My dad was a Marine. There wasn't, there was a lot of discipline in my house. But the goal for me was to grow up and join a company that had union benefits and union protection and, guaranteed air quote paycheck. And that's really what he wanted for me. And I thought that's what I wanted for myself, right? When you're little, you just think, oh, my parents know what they're talking about. So they say I need to get a union job. That's what I need to do. And I did. I got out of high school and started working for UPS, great company. Unfortunately, I hurt my back pretty young. At the age of 24, I was going to a chiropractor 3 days a week just to get out of bed. I was a wreck physically. And I knew I couldn't retire from there. Physically, there was no chance I was going to be able to do that for another, 30 years. So I got a job in the automotive industry. Once again, I felt like I had landed where I belonged, and this is what my parents told me I needed to do. And I worked there for a number of years. And now I'm just going to date myself a little bit, but I around the year 2000, everyone knows about the .com crash, but there was also an automotive industry, like real downturn. It was really bad. People were getting laid off in droves and thousands of people losing their job. And Michigan's heavily automotive, obviously. So I found myself in a position. I didn't lose my job, but I was seeing people lose their job all around me. And I didn't have an education. I didn't go to college. I got into UPS right out of high school. And I thought, my gosh, I am so expendable. Like, I don't even know if I would hire myself if I were to lose my job and I were the person across the table. Like, why would I hire me? I have a little bit of experience and no education. So I did what most like blue collar like people think, and it's great. I went to college as an adult with kids and a mortgage and a wife. I went to college and I got my degree, doubled my income right after I graduated, start getting on that white collar track, kind of working my way up that corporate ladder. And I thought, for the third time in my life, here I go. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is great. This feels like a big improvement over what I was doing. And I realized about 5 or 6 years in, I was looking at the people who held the jobs that I was gunning for at some point, right? Like I knew, like, I want that guy's job. Like, he's the director of this and that. And I got to know these people a little bit better. And what I realized was they hated their job. They hated their life. A lot of them hated their wife. A lot of them hated their husband, sick of their kids. Like, they were miserable because their life and the way they had structured it made them miserable. And I thought, wow, that's the job I'm going for. Like, everyone's miserable. And I can see that the stress level is just off the charts. And I thought, my gosh, for the fourth time in my life, like, what am I doing? So I started researching, Googling, like, how do I retire early? Like, what can I do, right? I know I'm going to be probably miserable for the next 25 years, but what can I do to mitigate that? How do I make my money work for me? And the only thing I knew of and never heard of was stocks in the stock market. So I thought, I'm going to have to learn how to invest in the stock market. That's my only way out of here. And I started doing that. And to make a very long story super short, I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. I did not enjoy learning stocks. I didn't enjoy about reading stocks. But when you Google investing vehicles and investing for retirement and how to retire early, what's the best investment, you will hit real estate. And I did. And I fell in love. Of course, I did what most people do. I started off reading success stories and living vicariously through other people. And then I started reading and getting books, and I started going to seminars and meetups and RIAs. And that's great. But I fell into a trap that I would dare say a lot of people listening have fallen into in their life, and that's paralysis analysis. I started getting shiny object syndrome, and every time I would go to a meetup or a seminar, read a book, that person was telling me how great what they were doing is and that I should be doing that. And when you get, the information age is great, but the downside of the information age is there's so much information. You can get paralyzed by all the information. So I went into learning mode, and I never got it. I spent 5 years, and it's embarrassing. And I just recently started admitting this, like, guys, like, you talk about, 12 months to $1 million. It's true. But there was a 5-year period there where I was just like spinning my wheels. I wasn't even doing anything. I wasn't making offers. So if you're not making offers and you're not getting deals, you're not an investor, right? But I let fear kind of hold me back. What will people think? What if I screw up? What if I lose money? What are my friends and family going to say about me? Like, I grew up in an environment that was not rich with entrepreneurs. So most of my family is as well-meaning as they are. They would have probably discouraged me and said, "What are you doing? Why would you take this risk? Like, you have a good job, just stay there." And so I did it in private. And there's a good long story that goes along with this, but I'll make it real short. The way that I came out to my family that I was buying houses and flipping them at the time is what I was doing is about a couple weeks earlier, the local newspaper, not the local, the biggest newspaper in Michigan, the Detroit News and Free Press, contacted me through Facebook and said, "We want to do an article on a bunch of flippers and, whatever. Can we interview you?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." So they did. And I thought, this is going to be in the back of like, no one will ever see it. No picture. It'll be a blurb somewhere. So fast forward a couple of weeks, I'm sitting at dinner at my parents' house on a Sunday with my family, and my mom gets a phone call. My uncle says he's in the paper. And we open up the paper. It's like front page, full color, half size of the page article, like local house flipper, success story, whatever. I was like, oh my God. So everyone found out. That's how everyone found out. But that's how I got my start. And I did that first deal, and I made some mistakes, but I made money. And what I needed was, and people, I ask this of people, I'd like to ask it of you, see what you think, but I've asked people in the past, do you think entrepreneurs are born entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurs can be made, or they can learn to be an entrepreneur? And I'll tell you what I think. I think some people are born entrepreneurs and they know it from the moment they can talk and breathe, and they're selling baseball cards, and they're mowing lawns for money, and they're hustling. And I think other people are born entrepreneurs, but they don't know it. They're born to be it, and it's dormant. It's something that sits inside of them, because I really feel that's what I was, because I didn't know it until I got a taste of it. But once I got a taste of it, I was insatiable. I was like, it almost felt like I had just come up from being underwater too long, and I was breathing like oxygen. And I was like, holy smokes, this is what I was meant to do. And so I don't know. I'd like to hear your feelings on whether or not you think they're born or made, or some combination of the two.
I think there's a third one. I think they are born, because ever since I was a kid, I knew I wanted my own company. I already knew. I started writing code. So I used to live in Windsor. I had the chills the entire time you're telling the story, because I was born and raised in Windsor, and I ended up spending a lot of time in Detroit and downriver. You probably know that area, right?
Of course, yeah.
And I followed the exact same track that you did. I worked in the automotive. I went, after that didn't get me anywhere, I did the master's program and all that stuff. So it's hilarious. It's so funny, because it's the same story. I went through the same story, right?
Yeah.
But to answer your question, I think that I knew right from the start that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, right? Some of them, that those skills they lay dormant, but then there is a third group, and they're just not entrepreneurs. Simple as that.
Oh yeah.
They're just not, so I think that there's more of number two, where they could be entrepreneurs, but they just don't know it. And with a little bit of training and coaxing, they can pick it up. But
yeah,
the ones that are born entrepreneurs, I mean, if you take your Zuckerbergs, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, I mean, those guys are born entrepreneurs, right? They knew from a very young age, and they showed it. They made a difference. Other ones, not so much, right? But they learned it
Yep.
and then they get it. But those ones, the ones that are not, they're just not. And that's okay
Yep.
too. And
Yep.
that's fine too,
I totally agree. I agree. There are some people who are not, and no matter what you do, they won't be an entrepreneur because they don't want to be, and that's totally fine. Like you said, by the way, for reference, I was born in Monroe. You know, downriver, so I'm downriver. Like I'm at the border of Ohio. Not now, but that's where I grew up. But yeah, Monroe. So
Right. But it's
small world.
funny that it was the same sort of thing with me too, right? It was the same thing where I did the whole school thing. I thought if you want to get rich, you have to go to school, right?
Yeah.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
My parents, that's what they told me, and they were blue collar the same way your family was, right? So,
Yeah.
but clearly that was a complete and utter lie. And
Yeah. Yeah.
real
Yeah. You know
real
what though?
estate is
That
what
was their
saved us.
that's their reality. Like that's their paradigm. That's what they grew up in, and they were trying to. Honestly, they were trying to protect me. They were trying to make sure that I didn't do anything stupid, probably, right? And
Yeah,
and honestly, even after I had like quote made it, and I was far exceeding my 9 to 5 income, and I was in the paper, I was speaking locally at events and like mentoring. I was on the track when I decided to leave my 9 to 5, and I waited for a long time, by the way. I sat him down and had dinner with him. I said, "Hey, I'm leaving my job. This is what I'm doing." And what my dad said to me was, "You're making a mistake. You're making a mistake." I was like, "Wow, it's never gonna get out of his bones. Like he can't see past it. It's just what he
yeah.
knows, right?" I mean, he was a tool and die guy. He worked in the automotive industry for 35 years, like Marine. Like you just go to work, you grind it out. Happiness is for other people. Like just go do it, right? That was the reality, and that's what he still believes it. I'm sure he still thinks I would be better off if I was working for Ford or Chrysler or something, right? So
I think that's the thing though too. I think that's also the thing that many people fall into that rut. I mean, my parents told me the same thing. My father said the same thing, and I love my dad very much, but he's the one that said, "Oh no, no, you have to be careful, son." When I first told him I'm gonna buy my first $1.6 million property, which scared the hell out of me, by the way.
yeah,
And he's like, "Oh my God, what are you? What are you? Are you Donald Trump? Who do you think you are?" And now we moved, right? So now we've relocated the home office to Cleveland. That was years ago. Now we're in Cleveland. We're in the city. I can actually see right outside the window the Rockefeller building, the
mm,
building I just bought, right,
nice,
in
nice.
downtown Cleveland, right? So it's a far cry from "what are you, insane" to "nice job, son." So
Yeah,
but fortunately, he sees that real estate is definitely the way. But I mean, it's by no means easy. That is certainly not the case. I think that 12 months to $1 million in profit. It took more than 12 months, like you said
oh
earlier.
yeah,
It
yeah.
took.
It was the typical overnight, sensation. You see the singer band or whatever, like, wow, they came out of nowhere and they just blew. No, they've been working gigs for a decade until they, overnight made it. I was the same way. I mean, I spent years trying to figure it out, making tons of mistakes, just doing everything wrong, basically. And but the perception was locally, I was still doing more than most people in my local market. It wasn't until I got a broader perspective and started putting myself in rooms with people who were doing much more than I was that I said, "Wow, there's a much bigger world out there than what I'm aware of." This kid from Monroe, like there are much bigger ways that I can think. And sometimes you just have to like stand on a building to see much further than you can see standing on the ground. And I think surrounding yourself, and that's one of the things that's probably the number one thing I did right. Put myself in the right rooms with the right people, ask the right questions, and now I can see so much farther. And that's really what happened. And if you watch the trajectory of my company like a graph, it kind of like slowly, gradually goes up and then it goes, boom, it just spikes like hockey stick, right? You know the reference. I said hockey stick growth to somebody recently on a podcast, and they're like, "I don't know what that means. I don't. You have to explain it to me." So but you're from the area, so you know hockey stick. But anyways, hockey stick growth, and it's like you would, as a normal thinking person, you look at like where that started, and you go, "Well, something happened right here, right? Something happened. What happened?" And that's really the basis of my book. It's exactly what I did and what happened and the changes that I made in my business to hockey stick it to make it go forward.
Now, what do you think it takes to get to that, to actually hit that hockey stick moment? Like if someone's listening, they're a solo entrepreneur and they don't know
Yeah.
what to do. What do you think they need to do? Like, what does it take to make that switch?
So one thing that kind of like I feel like I'm kind of railing on my dad a little bit, but one thing he did instill in me as a kid, and one thing that I have no problem with, is admitting that I don't know and admitting that I need help, and that there are people who are smarter than me who can help me more than I can help myself, because you don't know questions to ask if you just don't know what you don't know, right? So I'm really, really probably to a fault good at self-criticism and like saying, I don't know everything. I might be the dumbest guy in this room, but that's a good thing. So what I did and what people need to do is, number one, realize, there's a lot that went into that growth, right? And I can highlight it for sure. And I think we should do that. But one of the things that went into it was knowing that I don't even know what questions to ask. I'm so ignorant of what I'm doing wrong. If I can't, it took me, like I sat around for 5 years, learning and in education and all this fear, procrastination, basically. But then I spent another 5 years doing the business and having some growth, just doing it all wrong. And after a while, I had to realize, listen, I'm working my butt off like day and night, and I'm not seeing the kind of traction and growth that I think I should be seeing. I clearly don't have the answer. So then I started looking outward. Where do I go find the answer? Who has the answer? And who can help me understand what I'm not doing? And that's the moment, like right before that hockey stick, right before it, that's the moment when I said, I need help from other people because I'm not figuring this out on my own. Not to the extent that I want, right? It's all relative. Like some people would look at what was happening to me before I had the hockey stick and go, oh, you're doing great. Like you're flipping like a house a month. That's awesome. Yeah, it is. But I was spending a lot and I was wasting money and I wasn't able to like be comfortable like I thought I should be in financial freedom. And I knew I should be doing 5, 6, 7 houses a month. I just had no idea how to make that leap. It was a quantum leap for me. So I started surrounding myself with the right people and asking the right questions. And honestly, the most powerful thing, this is probably better for the end, but the most powerful thing that I learned in that time is if you can use somebody who's successful to you, like whatever you want to be, if you can find someone who is already there and you can use their hindsight is your foresight, the possibilities and the power of that is endless, right? Because people say all the time, like hindsight's 2020, right? Why not use my hindsight to guide you or your hindsight to guide people? Like that's power. That's true power. Because not only can someone tell you who's where you want to be, they can not only tell you what they did right to move the needle and to really help them, they can also tell you what they did wrong, right? So if you're speeding down a road and someone could go at mile 6 on the right-hand side, there's this huge pothole. It'll blow your tire out, right? You stay to the left at mile 6. And if you can have someone tell you those things, my goodness, there's no excuse to not be successful at that point. No excuse. And if the second thing I learned was, I didn't know what I didn't know, but then the second thing I learned was when you seek advice from someone that you truly believe has an answer for you that you need to hear and knows what they're talking about, don't second guess them. You don't but. You don't try to mess with the formula. Just do what they're telling you. If you seek them out and you know they know what they're talking about and they're an expert in that area, do what they say. Just apply it. Take action. Don't try to fix it. My mother makes great salsa, really good salsa. It's like legendary in my family. And one time my sister-in-law got the recipe. She's like, I want the recipe for this, right? She got it and she goes, I'm going to make it even better. Watch. And she made it and everyone agreed. It was terrible. It was horrible. It was bad, right? She tried to fix something that wasn't broken. Don't fix something that isn't broken. If you seek advice from somebody, you're listening to this podcast and all the great shows that you're having, and you bring an expert on and they're telling you this is what you should do. Don't fix it. It's not broken. Just do it. And I think sometimes people try to fix it because it's their way of hedging their bets. Like, well, if it's wrong, I changed it. So that's why, right? Like just going all in on what they tell you. And I when somebody said this is what I did and this is what I think you should do, I did it without question. And it works. It works, right? So that's one of the things I did.
But the kicker though is getting in those rooms. I think that's probably the getting those introductions and then quote being worth a damn, to speak to. Because oftentimes, I mean, I have to imagine you get this too. You'll get someone that shows up. I'm sure they're very nice. They're very nice to you and they're very cordial, but they don't even understand the basics around the business. And they say that they want to start flipping houses, but yet they know nothing about nothing. Right.
Yep.
And it only demonstrates to you that they're not really serious about doing what they say they're going to do. So, I mean, not to sound like a jerk, maybe you brush them off. I mean, I don't know. I know I would, right? No offense to the people listening, but
sure, I do. I think there's one of two ways that you can approach getting in the right rooms and talking to the right people. I think these are the only really two viable ways, because I do get a lot of requests for my time. I had somebody email me just the other day and said, hey, I'm trying to get started in real estate. I don't really know what I'm doing. I want to book time in your schedule. I'm like, hello, nice to meet you. I don't know who you are. Why in the world would I give you time in my schedule when you just all like, give me something, right? So I think there's two
Right.
ways you can go about it, and it'll be successful. Number one, you can pay to be in those rooms. There's masterminds, there's coaching programs that are absolutely legit. I mean, you mentioned at the beginning of the show, I'm in one. I paid to be in that mastermind. I paid to be around the folks that I knew I needed to be around because I knew that the investment was going to be nothing compared to what I was going to get from it. So you can do that. The second thing you can do if you're like, sorry, I don't have the money to pay anybody to be in any rooms. The second thing is figure out how you can be of value to them and offer to be of value to somebody before you ever ask them for anything. So if I'm calling you, I'm not going to say, hey, I want to start buying apartment buildings. I'm going to start buying commercial buildings. Like, get on the phone and tell me what to do. Like, I just want you to tell me what to do. It's like, you have a million things in your schedule, right? But if I can follow you, stalk you a little bit, figure out what your deal is, and then if I can find a way to insert myself into your life in a way that's meaningful and valuable to you for free, and I do that for a while, and then I say, hey, I wonder if I can pick your brain for half an hour. Like it's a different kind of approach. It's a different question. I will always help someone and talk to someone who approaches me from a position of trying to be valuable to me rather than someone just basically who has their hand out and says, give me something. And I don't know you, you don't know me, just give me something, right? It's very rare that I'll take those calls or meetings.
I think that's probably the biggest mistake that people make right there is that number two item, right? It's always about give me, give me, give me. If you demonstrate value for somebody, they will call you back. If someone brings a deal to me, they say, hey, look I got this, I found this cherry off market deal. It's 100 units. And if they call me with that, I'll return the call.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, tell me about this deal. Why do you have it? Why don't I have it and you have it? That's that sort of thing. And
Yep.
maybe his uncle wants to sell the asset, and he knows that I would be interested in it, right? Because
Yep.
just like you said, he'd been stalking me for a while, right?
Yep.
You just hand it over. Here you go. I can't close this thing anyway. You take it.
Yep.
I mean, I'll hook the guy up, for sure. I'll make sure I take
Yeah.
care of him, right? But then maybe I have a new friend, right? That's
Sure.
part of it is that what you just said, demonstrating value, and that's often very underestimated. That is one way to get the attention of someone else. You don't even have to do the mastermind. I think the mastermind is great too. I mean,
Sure.
absolutely, but you don't have to. You don't need 25 grand to get into a room with other
Nope.
people.
Nope, you don't. You don't. You can buy speed, you can buy knowledge like that, or you can go after it with a kind of a long term, lay the foundation, create the relationships, and that's great. Honestly, you should probably do both a little bit, but
Yeah,
yeah, I think it's totally great. I think the mistake people made is the shotgun approach. They're gonna email or they're gonna DM 30 people and say, "Give me," right, and they're hoping one person will say, "Okay." It's fine. It's just you're never going to create a relationship doing that. It
that's
feels,
right.
it feels kind of icky when people do that. And you're right. It sounds mean, but I don't respond to those usually because like you're not even trying, dude or lady. Like you're not trying. Try a little bit, and I'll try a little bit. So yeah.
That's right. Now, would you say that is the primary reason why some entrepreneurs fail and some succeed even with the same circumstances, or is it something
No,
else?
it's not. I think it's something else. In failure and success, let's just clarify right away. Failure and success is different to different people, right? My success and what I consider to be success might not be what other people consider success. And I've learned that too. I always put my success like criteria on other people, and I realize that's not good. But I think the number one, if I had to just like, man, the number one thing, if I give you a set of tools, if I give you my knowledge and say, this is what I think you can do to be successful, and I give you and the guy next to you or the lady next to you the same exact tools, why does one person succeed and the other one doesn't? I've seen this more than once. I'm in a coaching group. I've seen it. I've given the same tools to the same people, and one person will succeed and the other doesn't. It almost always boils down to execution, and that's not the sexiest answer. And some people are gonna go, well, oh, come on, man. I'm telling you, the people who second guess me, the people who but, the people who say, well, after Christmas I'll do it, or after the election I'll do it, or once the weather clears up I'll do it. They are the people that I know it's not going to work for them. But the people who take action, like immediate action, and they just keep taking action, those are the winners. I've been in rooms of people who are wildly successful, and they're not traditionally the smartest people in the world. They're not dumb. They're just not necessarily people with degrees or like, traditionally what you'd consider to be super intelligent, but they just never quit. And they always want to know how they can do something, not why they can't, but how they can. And that attitude means more than anything. I recently had this discussion with somebody. A good friend of mine, actually my mentor, I would say he's the guy that I sat down with and said, "What did you do? Like, I want to do what you did because you're where I want to be." I was talking to him just this week. What did I say? Monday, last week, late last week, and I said, I think the problem is, and this is, going back to the like give a man a fish or teach him to fish. Everybody wants to be given a fish. And nobody, I shouldn't say nobody, a lot of people don't want to know how to fish as long as they think you'll give them a fish. And the worst thing you can do to somebody when they come to me and want to know, like, I am trying to build this business and I want to know what you did and how I can do it. If I just start giving them tools and telling them just do this, 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 it sure is shoot, they're going to come back to me at some point and go, I don't, now what do I do? Right. It's the concepts that are really more valuable. And when people are listen to a podcast like this, or they go to a seminar or webinar or whatever, they're screenshotting and taking pictures of spreadsheets and tools. And I use this tool. Tools come and go, and my numbers, what I do in my business is not going to help you one bit, not at all. If I'm at a seminar and I put up the numbers I did in my business, and you see people will take pictures, by the way, doesn't help. And what they need to hear is, what is the mindset I had to get to the point that I am? How did I do it? Like, what changed, right? Knowing that you don't have the answers and you need to seek them out. Knowing that you need to provide value and give and give and give and give before you ask. And be relentless. Never, never, never stop. And when something happens to stop you, ask yourself what you could have done differently. Not what happened, not it's the president's fault, or it's my mom's fault, or it's my boss's fault, or it's my wife's or my husband's fault. Figure out how it was your fault and what you could have done. There's a book called Extreme Ownership. Jocko Willink, you mentioned, I was on stage with him. Mm-hmm. That book it should be a must read for everybody, in my opinion. Honestly, in a nutshell, I'll summarize it for you. Here's what it is. It's all your fault. Everything that goes well and everything that doesn't go well, you had a part to play, and you need to figure out what your part was and quit pointing fingers at other people and take responsibility. If more people just took responsibility for their own actions and the results of what they do, everybody would be happier. Everybody. Right? I mean, we teach our kids this. Take responsibility. Oh, my teacher hates me. That's why I got an E. No, there's definitely something you could have done to get a better grade. But then as adults, sometimes we forget those lessons and we start wanting to find outside reasons why we're not succeeding. And that's the poison. Like, it poisons you. It's so easy to point fingers. It's very hard to look in the mirror and say, I screwed up. That's me. That's on me. Right? So that was what happened right before it took off. Now, there's some things that I did in my business clearly that I had to do to change things, and some other things that changed that are more tangible. But that's the mindset shift that got me to that point where it started going hockey stick.
You know what, though? I think getting back to that very first question is, are entrepreneurs born or learned, for those first two buckets anyway? Mm-hmm. I think a lot of it has to do with that mindset. For many people listening, they would say, well, many of them, maybe they want to get into multifamily. Maybe that's why they're listening to this show right now. That mindset, though, of never, ever giving up, because this is a tough business. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. If you're learning anything for the very first time, it's going to be extraordinarily hard. You're going to encounter some real difficult times. And I think, to your point, get in front of the right people to get that help to pull you out of it. But that mindset, developing it, I think that's probably where a lot of people fail. I totally agree with you, man. I mean, it's strengthening and hardening that mindset for success. And then, just like you said, everything's your fault. Everything's your fault.
Yep. I mean, it has to be getting to where you want to go, success, whatever that means for you, right? I'm not going to put my success on you, but whatever you think that is, you have to want it like you want oxygen.
Yeah.
Because you will hit a point where it's difficult. It won't be easy. If it was easy, you'd already be there. Everyone would just be there, right? So it's going to hit a point where you really have to dig down a little bit. And if you don't want it bad enough, and most people don't, honestly. I mean, if you ask most people and they say, hey, would you like to run a multi-million-dollar business? They'd go, heck yeah. But they're just not willing to do anything different to do it, right? So they're never going to have that. You have to want it as bad as you want oxygen. And when you do, you'll find a way. Because if I take away your oxygen, how fast will you give up on getting oxygen? You won't. Like, you'll fight hard from the word go to the word until you're dead or you have oxygen, right? So you have to want it that bad. If you just sort of want it, or if it's like, in theory, it sounds great, you won't have it, right? It's like, I don't know what they say. Like, if information was all you needed, we'd all be millionaires with 6-pack abs. Like,
well, exactly. Yeah. Right. I'll have to just take pictures at the next webinar, and then boom, you're instantly on your way. Right.
Yep.
It just never works out that way. And you know what? It's funny. growing up in Michigan, I used to be one of those guys that would take all the screenshots and take out the phone and start taking, taking the pictures and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's funny. I never, ever, ever looked back at those photos.
Nobody does. Dude,
Nobody
I don't
does.
either. I don't either.
Nobody does it.
No. I mean, it's the same thing with business cards. You go to an event, you take a bunch of business cards. Most people take those, put them in a drawer, never look at them again, right? Like,
Right.
nobody does. But, that's why I think a lot of times, we're getting off on a tangent, but I like it. It's a good one. I think that's why when you listen to someone who you think knows what they're talking about, right? When they talk, you remember the stories, you remember the concepts. It's hard to remember the specific things that they say. It's just, your mind has to change. It just does. And it's like, everybody's like, no, tell me the app that I can use that will change my life. It's like, there is no app that's going to change your life. You have to change your brain. Apps will help you, the spreadsheets and how I track my numbers and all, like, it's all good, but it won't work if you don't change the way you think. And if you're not willing to execute and grind, like, that's it. It is. There's really very few people succeed like just by dumb luck and don't know what they did and didn't work for it. Like, it's very rare, So it's just not the formula. And most people just don't want it bad enough.
Yeah.
I had a family member who was going to start flipping houses, and I thought, I mean, I'll help. I'll definitely assist. And they're like, no, we got it. It's like, that was a year ago. They've never made an offer on a house, right? It's like they thought because they saw what was happening to me, and they were like, they thought it was just going to happen because it happened to me. So it just happens, I guess, if you give it a half-hearted effort. And they gave it half-hearted effort, nothing happens, right? And it's like, you can't. I mean, I worked at this business nights and weekends for 4 years, like Michigan, right? So you can sympathize. In January, in December, I'm sorry, in January, it gets dark at about 5:00 at night.
Yep.
And I'm going through houses at the time. I'm flipping houses. I'm going through houses with my cell phone light, and it's like below zero. There's no heat in the house. And I'm in this basement. Michigan has basements, guys. If you live in California, you're listening right now, like, we have basements, and they are creepy and sort of scary. And you don't know who might be in the house because it's abandoned, right? So it's like, I'm doing this for years to build my business and grind it out and figure out what I need to do. And that's how I learned the business. I did it on the side. I did it on the weekends. I didn't go home and binge watch something. I worked on my business. And it's like, if you're sitting home and you're watching Netflix for hours and eating chips, like, I don't know, man. Hopefully you like your life. And if you do, that's great. I want you to like your life. But if you don't complain until you actually start grinding and trying to do something about it.
But you know what though? The funny thing is, I used to be one of those guys a long, long, long time ago.
I did too.
Yeah, but once it's funny how once you make that flip, and it's not like something just happens overnight. It took a while for that to actually happen.
Yep.
But once it happens, now you look back and you're like, my God, did I ever waste so much time?
Well, unfortunately, when you work a 9 to 5, and man, I don't want to kill the automotive industry here, but when you're working in that industry, it is comforting to be negative and to accuse everybody else of everything that's going wrong, because that's what everyone's doing, unfortunately, at least in the circles that I was in. So it's like, it drags you into it. You almost, like, you're an oddball if you have optimism and drive. You're a little bit of an oddball sometimes in certain.
They make comics about it. They make comics about it. They're the outcast. That's right.
Yeah, that's right. So it's hard. It's easier to stand around and point at the boss and say he's a jerk and that's why my life sucks. But man, it's just not. And you're right. Once you flip and you realize it's you, it goes back, right? Extreme ownership. When you realize it's on you, right? I've heard a guy say this recently, like, you need to live your life like no one's coming for you. Stop waiting to be rescued. No one's coming. It's up to you, right? When you start living your life like no one's coming for you, it changes your perspective. And it made me way less tolerant. I sympathize with people who procrastinate and make excuses and blame people, because I was there too. I did it. I know what that feels like, and I understand that world, but I have so little tolerance for it. I don't lecture people. I don't condemn them. I don't look down on them. But if they come to me for advice, I have no tolerance for excuses. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't care who you were born to. I don't care where you're born. I don't care what color you are. It doesn't matter. It's blaming. That's what holds you down, is worrying about what your circumstances are. Forget it. You are where you are. Now what are we going to do next? Like, I have a saying in my company. We have values in our company, right? Like extreme ownership, hard work, honesty, and all this stuff. One of them is no apologies. I think that apologies and excuses only make the person who's making the apology and that makes them feel better. But if I screw up something in your company bad and I go, man, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm so sorry that I did that. Right. It makes you feel like crap because this person is apologizing to you. It just feels bad. And all I'm doing is trying to make myself feel better. Right. But if I come to you and say, I did this and this is the result and it sucked, but I know what I did wrong and it won't happen again. Like, that's good. That's ownership. And that's like looking forward. What are we going to do about this? Don't dwell on what happened. So I don't even want people in my company. I don't care what you do wrong, how badly you screw up, how much money we lose. Do not apologize to me. I don't want to hear it. It sounds weak and it sounds like an excuse. Just don't do it again. Like, let's talk about it. Let's do a post-mortem. Let's figure out what happened and then move on. There's nothing productive about apologies. So I don't let them happen. As soon as somebody says, I'm sorry, I go, stop. I don't want to hear it. Just don't do it again. Let's just move forward. Everybody makes mistakes, right? So anyway, that's my little 2 cents on apologies. I hate them.
No, but you know what though? Totally agree. But now you touched on your company. So tell us a little bit about how you set that up, about hiring and scaling that business. Like, how do you find those sorts of people that have that type of mindset? Because not everybody has that mindset. It's similar to what we, again, take it all the way back to that initial question. I think that there is, especially in today's world these days, not to get political, but I think anybody listening can understand where I'm going with this. There's a sense of irresponsibility. It's always someone else's fault and someone else needs to take care of me, right? I'm certainly not one of those guys. How do you find the right people to let them into your company? Because I found, anyway, when I worked in corporate, if you let one of those people in, you're in for a world of hurt that can taint the whole department, right? So how do you do it?
Yeah, I've done that. And I'm all about scale. I enjoy talking about scale. I think there's a whole science behind scaling your company. So specific to your question, how do you get the right people? Number one, have a process for hiring. Don't just interview people at a Starbucks and go with your gut who you like the most. Like, that's never gonna. I shouldn't say never. A broken clock is right twice a day, right? You might find someone, but you're gonna go through a lot of bad people. So we do a couple things. Number one, this is new for me, by the way. This is relatively new, this philosophy, because I've seen it work. And I asked somebody who was really good at hiring, and they said, I care much less about their qualifications and their experience. I care way more about their values. And so if you ask someone about their values and you say, do you believe in honesty and integrity? They're going to say yes, right? So you don't do that. You start asking them questions about, well, talk about a time when there was an issue that you kind of got blamed for it, or it was your fault or whatever. Like, how'd that go down, right? People are very quick to show you their values when you start letting them talk. And so I hire for values way more than I hire for experience in what they're actually going to be doing, because I can train people to do most things in my company, but I'm not going to change their values. If one of the first things out of their mouth is how much their boss hated them and he was a jerk, like, the interview's over. I'll be nice for another 5 or 10 minutes and then that's it. It's over, and I've lost interest when I hear that. Or how everyone else at their work was stupid and they didn't know what they were doing and they knew everything and everyone else was an idiot. Like, I can't deal with that person. I need a team player. So I hire for values, number one. I also use personality tests like the Colby or the DISC. You've probably heard of those. There's one called the Culture Index, a little bit more pricey, but I use those. Now, personality tests are not perfect. And if you're listening to this going, oh, I took one and it's not what I am. Personality tests are just a tool. It's part of the process. And it a lot of times will tell you how people are predisposed. It may not tell you exactly what they're going to do in every situation, but it'll tell you what they're predisposed to do and what they're likely to do. Now, some people, through experience and things, they can learn to adjust their predisposition and they can compensate for weaknesses that they have found in their life over the years. But it'll give you a decent idea for example, I've taken every personality test known to man. Every one of them come back and with a resounding 100% accuracy, always will say, my attention to detail is next to zero. Like, I have no attention to detail. So if you're hiring me to write contracts and be the last person to look at the draft before it goes off to the seller or whatever, like, never do that. I will always miss stuff. Always. I'm notorious, right? I should never be looking at documents or doing the details. I can't. And it took me a long time to realize I need an assistant because I miss details. And so things slip through my life all the time. Not now, but it used to. So I know I'm bad at details. Now, can I use apps and can I use tools that'll help me remember? Sure. Yeah, I do. And it makes me better. But I am still that person. I'm predisposed to not being good at details. So I should not be in charge of that. So we use those tools. we have a system of interviewing people. And like I said, I'm hiring for values. Doesn't mean I don't care about their qualifications. And I'll have other people in my company do an interview, like maybe one other person, to so that if I just happen to like this person, like I just like hit it off and I really like their personality, I'm not I'm not too skewed by that. I want somebody else to interview them too, so they can maybe look and go, yeah, this person doesn't have this, or this is something missing. And I go, yeah, I guess you're right. I just really like them. That's why I think I was giving them the benefit of the doubt. So we have these processes in place. But honestly, at the end of the day, if you think that the first person you hire and everyone after that is going to get a 30-year gold watch from your company, you're crazy. You're going to end up firing people. If you start hiring and building a team, firing people is part of the process. But it's an old adage, but it's true. And I've screwed this up too. Hire slow and fire fast. If you know someone's not a good fit, you owe it to them and yourself and the rest of your company to let them go. Let them go find a place where they do make more sense and they fit better, and get them out of your company. Because especially in real estate, and I know you can, I'm sure you'll agree with this, the opportunity cost of having the wrong people in the wrong seats in your company is astronomical. We're not selling 5-cent widgets. We are dealing in tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of dollar transactions. And if you have the wrong people in place, you could lose tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of dollars by having the wrong people there. You owe it to yourself, you owe it to them, you owe it to the rest of your team. So fire fast, get them out of there if they're not the right fit, right? Doesn't mean they're a bad person, obviously.
And I think to even add to that too, if you hear constant complaints about that person from other team members all the time,
Yep.
I mean, that could be another indicator. Maybe you may want to take a closer look at that, because I've also been at other companies where there would be one complaint that we had in one company I was consulting with. There's an example. The sales guy was terrible. He just would not do his job. There's no, I mean, you can also measure $0 coming in, yet they kept him on. Why? Don't know. But that's one example. But they chose not to do anything about it, and it was just like you said, caused astronomical damage to that business. And I don't think they ever recovered from it, because they refused to make the changes that were required. But I think another valuable piece of information that you said that I want to reiterate is that we've all worked for bad companies. Everybody has. I know I've worked for too many of them, actually. And especially in Detroit, you find a lot of them around there, right? Yeah. You know that. And it doesn't matter how crappy the company is, how bad they treated you, or the idiots that you have to work with. You cannot share that information with other people, especially a company you're interviewing at. I think many people make the mistake. I mean, and unfortunately they're judged on that same thing, right?
I mean, if you're interviewing someone whose every boss they've ever had has been an idiot, guess what you're about to become if you hire them? The next idiot in their line of idiots, because it's not everybody else, it's that person. Obviously, I did that. I have a whole chapter in my book dedicated to this person that I hired in my company that completely poisoned the water. I mean, everybody was coming to me with complaints. Now, here's the problem. She was performing at a very high level, like a rock star level. She was crushing it. And it made me hesitant to make a change. And even though everyone was complaining, everybody to a man was complaining to me about this person. And I kept making excuses and, you just don't understand. They've had a tough go of it in the last couple of jobs. I was making excuses because she was crushing it. She was killing it. And it came so close to being a complete mutiny in my company, people leaving like crazy, really good people. I had to make a change. But she was, like you said, salespeople, it's really easy to keep score, right? You're either making sales or you're not. She was in a position where it was equally as easy to keep score. She wasn't in sales, but it was equally as easy to keep score. And she was killing it. It's like everyone hates Michael Jordan. How do you let Michael Jordan go, right? It's like, you can't let the whole team fall apart. So I had to make a change, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And you have to do it. If you have someone who's a cancer to your company, you got to get it out before that cancer kills the whole body.
100%. All right. Now, Mike, for that person listening right now, hopefully they got a lot of value out of what we're talking about here today. What would you tell them? What sort of bulletproof advice would you give that person listening if maybe they're contemplating making a change in their life right now? Maybe they want to get some mindset help. Maybe they want to, I don't know, get some insight as to what they should be doing next. What would you tell them?
So I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to a lot of talks, a lot of TED Talks, all these things. And early on in my career, I would listen to these things, and everybody who I admired from a distance, the Steve Jobs and all these people that I would listen to these interviews they would do. At the end, somebody would ask them, what's the piece of advice they have for someone who maybe wants to be where you are or wants to get started? And I heard the same answer from so many people that I named my podcast this, and it's just start. Like, just start. Now, if you say I've already started, but I know I need to make this change, I know I need to start hiring, I know I need to start tracking my numbers better, I say just start. Just start doesn't mean from the ground zero. Like, make the change. You know what you need. Most people know what they need to do. They're just not doing it. They're putting it off, right? Do it. Do that thing. Challenge for the people. For the next week, every day, do the one thing that you know you need to do that you really don't want to do because it's hard, it's uncomfortable. Maybe it's letting somebody go. Maybe it's starting a new thing. Maybe it's whatever. For every day for a week, make the first thing you do that day the one thing that you really don't want to do, just for whatever reason, but you should, and you see what happens, right? And then if that turns out well, do it for another week, and you start stacking enough of those weeks up, you will see astronomical changes in your business and in your life.
Yeah, I did that same thing. I took that challenge and it changed my life. That's how I got to buy the Rockefeller building, right? So
nice.
But it took years. It didn't happen overnight.
And it won't. And if you don't have the staying power, man, just, it's going to be tough. But every day, do the thing that you know you need to do that you really don't want to do. That thing that you keep pushing and kicking down the road because you're doing the easier stuff first. Do the hard thing first and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Love it. All right, guys. If you want to reach out to Mike, you reach him via his website at mikesimmons.com. Hope you got some insight on how you can optimize and grow your mindset to really see some success in your life. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast.